This is not a story of gods or monsters. This is a story of geometry. The universe offers no compassion, only physics. For billions of years, our existence has been defined by a single, lucky near miss, a perfect orbit, a tolerable speed. We call the vacuum space, yet it is anything but empty. It is a cosmic shooting gallery, and we are the only target left. We spend our lives looking down at screens, at our feet, at the minutiae of debt and desire. We look up only to track the moon or judge the weather. We miss the signal. We miss the true, terrifying nature of deep time colliding with the absolute present. They found it first as a glitch, not a revelation, but an error term, an anomalous trajectory that defied the expected stability of the Oort cloud. It was a point of light in the cold expanse of the Kuiper Belt, tracked by the automated systems of the Pan-STARRS array. Initially designated 735A, it was a data smear that should have been harmlessly distant. The early models, built on optimism and terrestrial bias, spat out a 99.99% probability of safe transit. Humanity sighed and went back to its screens. But the remaining 0.01% was the universe's most elegant weapon. The revised calculations were delivered in a locked box to the world's leaders. The name was changed to Eclipsera, the eclipsing shadow. It was not a few hundred meters. It was 10 kilometers wide, a rogue behemoth of carbonaceous chondrite, its core dense with iron and frozen volatiles, traveling at 72,000 kilometers per hour. It wasn't missing. It was on a direct, undeniable intercept trajectory with the pale blue dot. The timeline was not months, it was 47 days. The initial shockwave was entirely psychological. When the truth broke, when every phone screen, every news ticker, every satellite channel showed the same stark, terrifying graphic of the growing object, the facade of civilization cracked. The collective dream of endless tomorrow dissolved into a terminal countdown. There was no more politics, only logistics of extinction. The desperate plan was conceived in a single, terrifying week. Project Aegis, to deflect Eclipsera by detonating our entire nuclear arsenal. 3,000 high-yield warheads and a concentrated kinetic energy strike 3 weeks out. The goal was not to destroy it. That was impossible. The goal was to nudge it by a fraction of a degree. A change of just 0.001% in the angle of approach would save the planet. We watched the launch in stunned, global silence. The rockets climbed, piercing the atmosphere, carrying the condensed violence of human ingenuity toward the void. The detonation was a silent, incandescent supernova far from the sun. A fleeting moment of blinding, artificial light in the deep black. And the asteroid, cold and utterly indifferent to our fusion-powered pleading, merely wore the blast. The strike carved a vast, black scar across its face, turning the surface into a superheated slag. It did not deviate. It shattered. The impact caused a massive spallation event, showering the solar system with 1 trillion tons of debris, but leaving the main body intact. Our ultimate weapon had only succeeded in creating a lethal, fragmented escort. The new trajectory, agonizingly precise, aimed it directly at the Pacific Ocean, the vast, open, deep water. The world governments, reeling from the failure, issued the final, hollow promise. It's survivable. An ocean strike is better than a continental strike. They had forgotten the physics of deep impact. The final week was defined by the relentless growth of the object in the sky. It was visible in daylight, a dark, unsettling presence that blotted out the stars at night. The air grew thick with a pervasive, silent dread. People stopped working. They stopped fighting. They simply gathered. They stood on beaches, on rooftops, in fields, looking up at the slow, inevitable shadow. The final sound transmitted globally was the recording of 1,000 voices singing the same ancient, mournful song. Then the signal was dropped. The first contact was not audible. It was gravitational. As Eclipsera plunged into the upper atmosphere, the sheer force of its mass and speed compressed the air before it into a solid, impenetrable wall. This air shockwave arrived minutes ahead of the body, a silent, invisible fist that ripped the leaves from trees and shattered every pane of glass across 2,000 miles. Then came the impact. It hit the deep, cold mantle of the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Central America. The water did not splash. It was instantaneously vaporized into an atmosphere of superheated steam and plasma. The kinetic energy released was equivalent to 100 million megatons. The crust of the Earth did not merely shake, it recoiled. The initial blast wave was a hemisphere of incandescent light brighter than the sun, flashing across half the globe. Anything within 500 miles of the epicenter was not killed. It was annihilated, leaving only shadow etchings on the scorched Earth. The resulting cavity was 3 miles deep and 60 miles wide. The shockwave that propagated through the solid rock, the seismic hammer blow, created a global network of earthquakes that dwarf any recorded history, tearing open major fault lines across every continent simultaneously. But the true cataclysm was the tsunami curtain. It was an oceanic battering ram that swept across the Pacific Rim. Coastal cities were not flooded. They were scoured to the subsoil. The momentum was so vast that this great flood did not recede quickly. It pushed miles inland, altering the topography of continents in hours, burying the remnants of human civilization under vast, muddy deltas of pulverized rock and concrete. Yet, even this was only the prelude. The event that earned the name Eclipsera was the Ejecta Cloud. Trillions of tons of molten rock, dust, and vaporized asteroid material, launched at orbital velocity, were thrown straight through the atmosphere and into the near-space environment. This debris, now burning white-hot from the friction of re-entry, became a planetary blanket. It fell back to Earth not as rain, but as a global meteor shower that lasted for 48 hours. Every square kilometer of the planet that was not submerged was subjected to a relentless barrage of superheated droplets. The heat pulse radiated downward, igniting every dry fuel source simultaneously. The forests, the grasslands, the millions of homes, the gas stations, they all became one single, continuous source of fire. This was the Global Firestorm. The world was not a planet. It was a kill. The heat was so intense, it cooked the very top layers of the soil. The sky became choked with smoke and soot, forming a permanent, impenetrable shroud. The temperature on the surface rose by hundreds of degrees. Those who had survived the initial seismic shock or the flood were now incinerated by the planetary heat pulse or suffocated in the oxygen-starved, smoke-choked air. When the fires finally consumed everything flammable and choked out their own fuel source, the world fell silent. The smoke remained. Weeks turned into months, and months into years. The soot, suspended in the stratosphere, blocked 99% of solar radiation. The oceans, no longer warmed by the sun, froze at the poles and along the coastal regions. The average global temperature plummeted. This was the impact winter a decade of profound, absolute cold and darkness. Photosynthesis ceased. The engine of the food chain stalled. The vast, interconnected web of surface life collapsed. The survivors, the deep-sea dwellers, the chemosynthetic organisms, the tiny, tenacious mammals in deep geological shelters, were the only things left to inherit the new planet. Humanity, as a global voice, had been extinguished. We had lost the lottery of geometry. The silence lasted for 13 years. The cities were buried under thick layers of black, acidic mud and glacial ice. They were not ruins, they were geological layers. The world had returned to a primordial state of gray and white. But the atmosphere eventually cleanses itself. The soot slowly began to precipitate, falling as thick black rain and snow. And one morning, after the long terminal night, a sliver of filtered, coppery light pierced the smog. The sun had returned. It was not the sun of old. It was weak, diffuse, and hostile. The air was breathable, but highly acidic. The ozone layer was fractured. The land was barren. From the bunkers, from the geothermal shelters, from the silent, concrete vaults built against the memory of the Cold War, the scattered descendants of humanity emerged. They looked out at a planet that bore no resemblance to the world their ancestors remembered. The oceans were vast, cold, and strangely quiet. The continents were carved by new river systems and scarred by vast igneous flows from the deep fault lines. They were not pioneers reclaiming a paradise. They were refugees on a poisoned, magnificent new Earth. They discovered that life at the microbial and fungal levels, had not merely survived, it had thrived. The extreme conditions had triggered a massive evolutionary bottleneck, favoring the hyper-resilient. Strange, luminescent fungi dominated the darkened continents, drawing energy from mineral decay. Deep in the hot vents, life forms were metabolizing the new, complex hydrocarbons created by the impact. Humanity, stripped of its technology, its infrastructure, and its arrogance, had to learn to live with the physics of the planet, not against it. They began to build shelters from scavenged stone and volcanic glass. They learned to farm the strange, hardy mosses that grew in the perpetual twilight. They were no longer the apex predator. They were merely one tenacious species among many, defined by their memory and their will to teach the next generation the brutal history of Eclipsera. The asteroid had been destruction, but in its profound violence, it had delivered a kind of cosmic inoculation. It had scoured away the unsustainable complexity of the past. It broke the old systems. It forced the new world to be built on an absolute foundation of resilience and humility. The final lesson was not about defense, but about perspective. We are not masters of this world. We are tenants. Our brief, brilliant age of industry and noise was simply a chapter. The earth endures. Life endures. The descendants eventually named their new civilization Ethel, the new sun. They looked up at the moon, which was now accompanied by the faint, dust-covered debris field of Eclipsera's spallation, event a permanent celestial scar. They were the children of the quiet, the inheritors of a forced reset. They survived not through technology, but through the primal, chemical impulse to persist. They knew that the universe is a calculus of geometry, and they were the proof of the most powerful equation of all. Life always finds a solution. The great shadow passed. The world was remade by fire and ice, only to be reclaimed by a quieter, humbler green. The sound of the new rain began to fall. Not acid, just water. The great silence was over, and the long, slow, difficult work of living had begun again. Please, please, please subscribe to Altanate for more mind-bending what-ifs.